I want to talk to successful people and learn about the adversity they went through, how they got through it, what we can learn from it, and help us all collectively move forward. Underdogs don't stop. Hey everyone, welcome to Underdog Untold, a show where I bring successful people on to discuss not just their successes, but their unsuccessful times, adversity, and ways that they overcame it to become successful. Today, really proud to introduce a friend of mine, Dorri McWhorter, who currently resides as president and CEO of YMCA in Chicago. She was CEO of YWCA in the past. She's on multiple boards, advisory boards. Really, if I listed her resume, it'd probably take up the whole show. So, Dorri, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. The last time we saw each other in person was at the Chicago Bulls event, where we were both judging incredible entrepreneurs who eventually we had a winner, Honest Game, who
Yes.
won $50,000 from Loud Capital, and they're doing really great things for the education system.
Yes, that was amazing. And it's so funny. You inspired me. You didn't even know that. You all were wearing matching Nikes that day.
Yes.
And I shouldn't. Well, my team will hopefully see this later, but I got my team matching shoes for Christmas. so,
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, and I'll tell
but you
you,
inspired me because you all were so cute that day.
so we went out on the United Center at the last Bulls game before the whole world shut down
yes.
for the pandemic, and we all decided to buy orange Jordans
hmm
because Loud Capital's orange, and we thought we were cool. And some of my other partners actually drove that decision. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And now 4 years later, they're like cool kicks, and I didn't realize that. Apparently, they were cool before, but
Right.
yeah. So, anyways, that wasn't my idea, but glad it inspired
Yeah,
some
you
Nike
all did.
sales. Hopefully, Nike's hearing this and can send some good stuff to us.
Exactly.
Um, anyways, it's great to have you here, and I would love for folks to understand. Number one, what does CEO of YMCA mean? And tell me a little bit about the Oregon and your position.
Sure. So for me, it means that I get to work with incredible individuals, 1,700 of them actually, to help over 200,000 folks across the Chicagoland area. As we say, our mission is to strengthen community by connecting all people to their purpose, potential, and each other. And so
Woo.
I get the great fortune. I know, isn't that amazing? I get the great fortune of leading the organization to absolutely ensure that that happens. So we're able to do it whether it's through our early learning services. Of course, many people know us for our fitness services, but also for our community development efforts. So there's a lot that's happening here at the Y, and we're actually excited as we launched a new brand platform called the Power of Play, because we know that play is all those activities and positive actions that absolutely lead to progress. And so that's something that we're leaning into pretty heavily now.
Yeah, the power of play. I love that. And it's just a reminder to us adults, especially where we
Absolutely.
lose some of that value and reminder of playfulness and what
hmm
it does for
hmm
our mental health, for our creativity,
Yes,
for our joy.
absolutely. And
Um,
that's exactly what play does. And so it's really for everyone, right? So
yeah, and how do you incorporate play into your position and to the fellow executives and leaders around you?
sure. Well, I like to think I play all day, right? And so, but it isn't everything. It's just how we interact. And it's just a levity, I think, that's an experience within the organization, because the work can be really hard, right? Sometimes we're helping folks deal through and address challenging situations. But I think that the way we do that and choose to do that from a point of inspiration and quite honestly joy, it leads to better outcomes for folks. So for me, it's simple as making sure I greet everyone as I walk in the door on my way to work, whatever that may be, as well as just having fun. it's
Yeah.
just having fun. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel like a lot of us talk about it and say, we're going to incorporate more playfulness. We're going to incorporate more joy. And then the mood passes and then it's
Right.
just a tough day. So I
Yeah.
think being consistent with that deeply in your values is what can bring it out consistently.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we actually created our values and they are play. So it's purposeful learning, agility, and yes. And
Ooh,
so we created play as values. So yes.
great. And yes, what does yes mean? When I just posted today in LinkedIn about saying no more often, saying no to
Oh, that's
people that saying no to people, saying no to a lot of things and saying yes to my good health, saying yes to
absolutely. Well, and you hit the nail on the head, right? That when you're saying no to something, you're absolutely saying yes to something else, right? And so, and being mindful of what that no is so that you can intentionally walk into the yes, right? And so for
yeah,
us, what we were saying is that as we look to have yes as a value, that it is thinking about how do we get to yes? Because it's so easy to get to know. For us, for example, we have 25 sites and we've closed sites over the years, and to me, that's almost the easier thing to do. But what's harder is saying yes to figuring out how to make these, great locations operational and really serve the community, right? So yes is actually harder than no to some degree. But if
interesting.
you're if you're intentional about the yes, then the no becomes just something that has to happen to get to the yes.
So tell me about you're in a very, you know, responsible and important position, right? And you seem to have a great attitude. You seem to know how to keep moving forward with joy and playfulness. But tell me some things that have really been challenging in this role. I know you've had multiple roles, but
Yeah.
what is a challenging thing? And actually, when you stepped into this position,
Mhm.
was the organization in an awesome, condition where you're walking in and just continuing to cruise along, or
Okay, I mean, that would be no. So that was not the case. And so, I joined the YMCA in August, well, really July, August 2021. And as we know, that was still, the world was still navigating through COVID. And actually, the YMCA took a pretty big hit, right? When you think about the YMCA, it's a very much physical, um, very
yeah.
much capital intensive business, right? Like you can't teach people how to swim over Zoom, right? So
Yep.
there's just a necessity there that requires people to be together, and they couldn't. And then once when I came in, of course, the world was starting to reemerge and folks were getting back into the swing of things. And so I came in with the responsibility, of course, still navigating COVID protocols. And because of the metropolitan Chicago area, we had different, sort of locations and geographies that were required they were mandated, masks and closed in some places, and in the other places wasn't like that. So we had to really navigate that. And so the impact of that for the Y though had been that we lost over 50% of our revenue when I was coming in.
Wow.
And so for me, that was just like, ooh, this is a great opportunity to help transform the organization. And I call these they're not evil genius fingers, they're good genius fingers. I'm like, ooh, how can I help, right? Transform this organization and hopefully help it emerge in a different space, because as we know, the world is so different, right? The fact that we're doing this, right, just demonstrates how different the world has become.
Yeah. So the organization lost 50% of revenue. Things were looking stressful. And then you put up your hands like, oh, what an opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, that's stressful. That's a ball of stress over there.
Mhm.
So tell me the mindset as you approach the organization to take on this leadership,
Yeah,
position.
well, what made me really, well, I guess what really drew me to the organization was that I knew that a number of folks had been furloughed just because of the environment. You weren't operating at all. We had to, at that time, they were just closed. And so that was actually something that saddened me to think that, I think at one time the Y had over 3,000 employees, and to know that that workforce was also heavily impacted. And so for me, it really felt like an opportunity for me to go help more people, by not only thinking about the impact we could have, with the workforce, but thinking about if we could reopen these sites and be of service to the community. Not only could we help the employees, but we could also continue, of course, to create greater impact in the community. And so that it drew me to it. And yes, I recognized where we were, and it was kind of no fault of its own. As we all know, COVID happened, right? And
Mhm.
so to me, it was just, I was just like, I just see so much possibilities there that,
Yeah.
we have this 165-year-old organization that's been really a pillar in the community and being able to serve so many people. And it was almost to me a disservice to not come here and try to really put it on a new trajectory. And so that's what we're up to now.
Yeah. And that's a great attitude. Have you always had this confident attitude?
I won't say it was confidence as much as I've always wanted to just, I know this sounds so cliche, but I just wanted to help. And so when I see things, I'm like, wait a minute, we could do this or we could do that, or we should be doing this or we should be doing that. And so I think I've always had this perspective that we can all make things better no matter how big or small. Even I think about, my dad, who I just, of course think the world of, but he just did little things to make people's lives easier, as simple as we would be in the car and we'd be going straight, but he would be in the right lane. And so he's like, oh, I'm in the right turn lane, people want to turn right, so we would turn even though we were going straight. And I'm like, God, we gotta just go straight, they can wait 2 minutes. but
Yeah.
but it was just the mentality of how do you just help and be better. And my dad was just an example of that in his just like everyday life, and the littlest things like turning right because you have a line of people even though you're going straight. So
Yeah. And, I'm a parent to two
yeah.
teenage daughters. And so let me ask you, so what your father did in the car, which
Mhm.
at the time you were like, Dad, come on, just do this, right? So that
Yeah.
was your reaction.
Yeah.
But it seems like it really did influence you.
Absolutely. It was high. Just and watched him how he treated other folks. He worked in a factory in Racine, Wisconsin, and and yes, a blue collar worker, but at the same time, when people would come to work at our house, he would pull out a cooler of soda or water, and he was
Yeah.
just such a kind human. And so it just really showed me that all acts of kindness are highly impactful, no matter how big or how small. And so in that, and I just didn't realize at the time because I was an annoyed teenager, like, really, are we really going to go
Yeah.
right when we're not? We're going supposed to go straight. But I think as you clear, here I am at 50 talking about something that happened at least 30 years ago. So clearly it just impacted me that it is those little things that can make a difference.
I think parents need to hear this. It really is those small actions where you probably get resistance from your kids or the
Mhm.
people in the car, like, what are you doing? But
Yeah,
the actions do matter. And
yeah,
many times it's not us saying, make sure you do this.
right.
It's what you do being
Absolutely.
observed, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that, goes into leadership, right? So
Mhm.
we're talking about parenting at home.
Yeah.
Now talk about leadership in an office or in a setting where
Mhm.
people are watching, and we can say a lot of things and we want to and we feel responsible to,
Mhm.
but it's the actions in front of them and behind the scenes that people do notice.
Absolutely. And it's particularly in such a sort of content heavy world, right? It's so much what we put out there and what we put on paper and what we put in sort of the public domain. But it's always those small things that people observe you doing, right? That actually, I think, contribute to the impact, right? So
Yeah, yeah, and everyone, thanks for joining the show. I see the comments. Appreciate the warm welcome and good morning to everyone. And Dory's in Chicago right now. Is that correct?
yeah, I am. I am right in our office in the West Loop.
Yes. So I used to live in the West Loop in 2003 before the West Loop, well, actually 2005 before the
Okay.
West Loop was cool. So I consider myself a trendsetter. I just don't stick around long enough
Yeah, that you
for
are.
it to realize the coolness. So just
Right.
FYI.
I think the YMCA came here in 2006-ish, I think. And so to watch it sort of sprout around us, so we kind of landed before it got cool too. So
Yeah. We were just talking about go back to that. So let's say I'm a teenager watching this show or listening to it
Mhm,
eventually, and they say, I want to be like Dory. I want to be where Dory is. Her leadership role, the organization that she leads. She seems so happy where she's at. What do you tell a teenager right now who's in school, studying really hard for exams? Midterms are coming up.
mhm.
Um, what do you tell them on some maybe learnings or things that you've realized over time?
Yeah, first I would tell them that these are not instructions, these are perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Because, I think that's so important because I was just talking to, actually, I just saw something the other day where I can't remember who it is, so forgive me, whoever said this. But they were like, "Why do we ask 3-year-olds what do they want to be when they grow up? They're 3, let them be 3, right?" And so to the 16-year-old, yeah, I mean, the fact that we think people will have it all figured out by 18 is just mind blowing to me. But to the 16-year-old, I just say, continue to, um, you know, move towards the things that give you joy, because in that, right, you're going to uncover and discover um, those things that not only make you happy, but you will begin to incorporate that into what you ultimately do from a profession, or the way you choose to create a livelihood for yourself. So I just would love for us to let we were talking about how as adults we don't play as much, but when we do have the opportunity to really incorporate that play younger in our lives, I just could only imagine how the youth today, if they knew that they could sort of seek joy and
Yeah,
lean into the things that made them happy, because we already know many of the professions and the careers that they'll do haven't even been created today. But I think if
yes,
they could follow that sort of path of joy and the things that truly make them happy, who knows what will be discovered or created because of them. So I
yeah.
guess I would give them any advice. I'd be like, just do you.
Just do you. Yeah. And there's
Just
changes ahead that you won't know about.
yeah, and
It-
but if you
yeah,
tend to do the things that make you most happy, provided they're good, which, um, I think that they'll figure it out, right? And they don't have to have it figured all out in 2 years.
yeah. One of the things that I've found helpful at kind of a mindset shift to myself and to kids
Yeah.
is, not what do you want to be when you grow up,
Hmm.
but what do you want to start with?
Oh, I love that.
What career do you want to start? What do you want to work towards?
Right.
Because, in my background and some, you've been at different places.
Hmm.
I thought I was going to be here and then I ended
Hmm.
up here
Right.
and no regrets at all. But I really
Right.
wish there was some expectation of there's a good chance that I work really hard to get, you know, to be a physician
Hmm.
and I'm going to change and things are going to
Yeah.
change where I don't want to do this every day. I
Yeah.
want to do
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it takes maybe a little bit of this pressure off of
Hmm.
this final destination,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. And, and if you think about it too, that's, just the question of what do you want to be when you grow up? It's so limiting because quite honestly, the B is sort of fixed, right? Because it can only truly reflect what's currently there. And so it's like,
Yeah.
y'all need to explore. You're 3. You got plenty of time to figure it out, right?
No, no, the
Yeah, the
pressure we
pressure
put
we
on it
put.
on
Yeah,
our kids. And
right.
I'm guilty too. Look, I'm telling you this. I feel like I act on this about 80% of the time, but there's some corners or some time slots where I'm talking to my daughters and I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, what
Yeah,
am I doing?
yeah.
Right. So,
But your intentions are good, right? So
oh yeah. No, and I
it's
think
because we
that's
have that perspective, right? We're like, "Oh, the world's gonna eat her up, so we better help her figure it out now," right? But so it comes with
yeah.
good intentions, but it's still a lot of pressure.
I like to talk about underdog scenarios. And so
Yeah,
one of the scenarios that I feel is one of the toughest roles that I play as a parent
absolutely.
because you have this wisdom, you have these loved ones next to you that you want to
Mhm.
pass on that wisdom,
Yeah,
but it's their journey. And so you
right,
can sprinkle some things of joy and wisdom and
right,
say, please don't fall too hard, but you
right,
need to let them fall. You need to let them do their thing. That is
right.
so challenging.
Yeah, I know. I don't have children. I have nieces and nephews, and of course, I'm surrounded
Yeah.
by youth just being here at the Y. And so I've actually taken sort of the word advice. People are like, "Oh, give me some advice." I'm like, I'll share perspective," because
Yes. I love that.
I always lean into I have a perspective. I'll let you judge if you choose to incorporate that perspective and then call it advice. But for me, it's just like we all have these different experiences, because you're right, Naveen, right? We all have these individual journeys. And so I can tell you what my journey, how it unfolded, but that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just one
Share
perspective, right? And it's how I handle it. So maybe, it inspires some action in you, or maybe not. Maybe it's just like, I'll just judge you for that. But
I've learned to share experiences, not to tell
yes,
people what to do. And
absolutely.
when you're talking at
Absolutely.
people, it's not gonna land as much, and I also think that's one perspective, to your point. So
Absolutely.
sharing perspectives and experiences, I think, is a great way to pass on wisdom and see if
Yeah,
it's received or not.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, Tell me a little bit about the YWCA.
Hmm.
So, right, you're CEO of YMCA in Chicago, and you
Yes,
were also at the YWCA before. So
right.
that was also an organization that was having challenges when you joined. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. And I like to think of my time at the YWCA where I really had an opportunity to sort of experiment with this thing called a social enterprise and see, what good we could create. And so when I was there, I joined again because I wanted to help. I actually was sitting on the board and had been on the board for 8 years. And the last year or so, every quarter we come in and we just see the results decline. And so ultimately, we decided that we needed to take the organization in a different direction. And I didn't realize at the time I was a partner in a public accounting firm. So speaking about careers, Naveen, that we have this complete pivot from. So
Yeah.
I'm a CPA by background, and so I was a partner at the public accounting firm at the time, and just was like, I can do more. I can help this organization, and so decided that I would, throw my name in the hat during the CEO search, and I was fortunate they selected me at that time, and so
Wow.
became CEO of the YWCA at the time. And what that did for me, we were able to really sort of experiment in terms of what could work with this very traditional charity human services organization. And so what we learned is that by telling our stories differently, by creating new and different partnerships, that we were able to put it on absolutely a great path and trajectory for success. We grew revenue over 4 times by the time we were done, and not done. By the time I left, they're still going, which is great. They're still going strong. But for me, it was about how do we, recognize that what we're doing absolutely has value in the community, and bring that to different audiences that should know and should want to support the work that we were doing. So yeah, so at the YW it was fun. We went from double digit, well, actually $1 million deficits, and we're definitely in the black by the time I
Wow.
left, which was I was excited about. So yes.
Yeah, you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word experiment, and
Hmm.
a conversation we had a few weeks ago when you were telling me that you have brought creative solutions and have experimented, which is what I think has contributed to some of your success.
Hmm.
But haven't you gotten some walls put over up, on that when you're trying to bring non-traditional methods or ways?
Absolutely. And, and as I sit back, right, and can think about it now. So when I was at the YWCA, for example, at one of our challenging times, we saw a real significant loss in government funding as we had um, a new governor at the time, and just the administration was setting different policies, and so that saw a budget impasses, all those things that cause resources to be lost. And we started really partnering with corporations. And so we're an organization serving women. And so, while it sounds cliche, we leaned into the fashion industry heavily. And people were like, what, you're supposed to be out there marching and 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 you're holding fashion shows with Jimmy Choo. What are you doing? Right? But it was a way
Sounds
that we
brilliant.
actually it was right, and we were able to really establish ourselves because what we saw was that there people enjoyed shopping and having positive experiences. And this was over 10 years ago, before I think a lot of cause marketing and things like that really have taken hold. But we were doing in-store events with major brands and using those resources to support our work, and we were getting six-figure amounts from these collective resources. And so I'm like, yeah, you can be a feminist and wear Jimmy Choo's. and so and so that was something that for us really became a differentiator. But just to hear sort of the people, right? Just the noise, right? That folks were doubting our commitment to women and the movement because we were, you know, hanging out with fashion designers. It was just like, what? You can change the world a million different ways.
There's
And
no
we were
one box.
there's not one box, but people like their boxes. And so that's just one example that I just really recognized early on, that we just have to lean into our own sort of superpowers to make sure that we do what we know is best, and try different things, because people are really inclined to lean into what's comfortable and what's been familiar for them.
It's also a great reminder. We were talking about play early on in the
Yeah.
in the show. Um, when it comes to music, entertainment, creativity, which
Mhm.
to me, fashion is creative energy and
Yes.
expression of sometimes deep beliefs or
Yeah.
expression of your mood.
Yeah.
Um, those usually never fail to add a higher level of engagement to your event or your purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you think about, we talk about this all the time, right? When you think about some of the, most well-paid professions like are in entertainment and sports because those things make people happy. I'm
Yes.
an accountant, you're a physician, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, not that these are shabby jobs by any
No,
means, but at
but
the same time, but folks that I feel like, the happier you make folks, the more resources you gain, right? As we see in like the athletics or sporting and entertainment and all those
yeah,
things, because people actually like joy.
I think it brings another level of joy, and it's also very unifying, right? When it comes to sport, we
Absolutely.
come together,
Absolutely.
elevate the experience.
Mhm.
You really can't lose in that scenario, and that's why I think
Absolutely.
sports, fashion, entertainment, when
Right.
you add that to the mix of your purpose or your
Yeah.
job or whatever, it
Right.
brings a level of playfulness, and I think
I mean,
sometimes many of us forget that.
right, and think about, we talk about, oh, brick and mortar, people don't do brick and mortar, but yet they fill stadiums.
Yeah.
Right, so there's something about that space and what we're doing in that space together that matters. So perhaps people don't want the brick and mortar to feel like robots going through, your shopping aisles. However, put some folks on a field and have a good time, and you can fill a stadium. Or, if you look at Beyonce or Taylor Swift, they fill stadiums. So I do, argue the fact that people are like, oh, people don't want to be together. Yeah, they do. They just don't want to perhaps, do boring things together. So,
Yeah, and
including
we
work.
we have a few minutes left, but I'm gonna ask
Okay.
one thing that I think is important for myself and others to know. You seem to be on various boards and you
Mhm.
have a lot of board experience. I get approached by a lot of folks who say, I want to be on a board. How do I
Yeah,
do this? What
yeah,
should I know? What's a quick blurb on how people can get involved on boards as we want to bring diverse experiences and people
sure,
on different boards?
sure.
What should they know if they've never been on a board, they have their own experience, and they want to
Mhm.
start dipping their toe into it?
Yeah, a couple things. I think, primarily the reason I continue to be on boards is because I am a CPA, right? That's my background, and so that is
Yeah.
a specific skill set that's needed.
Okay.
But
So study to
many
be
of
a
us,
CPA.
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I would say hone your profession, right? Hone your expertise, or your that's what it's about, right? What expertise can you bring to these boards? And then I think also for me, because I'm sure you get approached and with the companies that you invest in to think about boards in different ways. So it's absolutely about your expertise, but it's also about, for me at least, creating sort of that portfolio approach. And I think of every board that I sit on is sort of its own platform that is
Yeah.
creating impact. So many of the boards I sit on have sort of an ESG, actually all of them have some ESG through line. And for me, that's really important. So I say two things. Of course, having that expertise, honing that expertise, and recognizing that that expertise is what they want on a board from that perspective. But then also for yourself, really honing in and focus on an organizations that sort of also feed into your sort of personal mission, I would say.
Oh, that's great. And I'm going to end with stuff I really care about, which is personal development and
Mhm.
self-awareness.
Mhm.
So you're a CPA, so you know your expertise and you know what you're bringing to the table. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people who have done a lot of things that may not have a formal
Sure.
degree or kind of label into, hey, this is what I am.
Sure.
So the journey of self-discovery is so
Mhm.
important, not
Mhm.
only for fulfillment, but to really know what you're bringing to the table, right? To be
Absolutely.
aware of what you're bringing to the table.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important. So, any last words for the last minute?
Yeah, no, I just say you again hit the nail on the head. I just think it's so important to recognize your value and be able to articulate that, right? And all of us have value. That's my one thing that my hope is for everyone to know in the world, to know that they are valued and loved. And so I just think it really just takes a little more extra time to recognize what that value is.
Well, thank you so much, and I really, really mean this. Your energy and your attitude is so what do you call it? contagious.
Well, thank
And
you.
I really feel it can be used to knock more doors down. So I really hope you continue to make such an impact at the organization you're in Chicago. But I also think you're gonna go to bigger stages and impact a lot more people. So appreciate what you do on a
That's
daily
the
basis.
goal. Thank you, Naveen. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being such a force for good yourself.
Well, you're welcome. I'm grateful to have you on here. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a great show, and until next time. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show and want to continue to learn more, follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Help us tell these underdog untold stories by sharing it with people who could learn and be inspired from it. Remember, underdogs don't stop.